Alright, I guess we'll start class. Give me 1 second though, I'm just going to set the other recorder as well. I generally start 2 recorders just in case I miss one, and that way we don't wind up losing any lessons to YouTube, especially considering I don't have a second PHP class that I'm teaching, so there's no way for me to catch up if something screws up. Alright, so this is Intro to Web Programming. Hopefully you're in the correct class. My name's Sean. Some of you might know this as Intro to PHP. Depends on what it says in your syllabus. I've always known it as Intro to Web Programming. Yeah, so it's a cool class because you're going to not only learn PHP programming, you're also going to get to learn about how the web works, which is, fundamental to understanding how to build websites, right? To be full disclosure, I'm not a big fan of PHP. I have used PHP. I've built some cool things with PHP, but the current stack that I prefer to use is the MERN stack, which is Mongo, Express, React, and Node, and that's what I use in my day job. But I mean, PHP is a good language to learn with. It's nice and synchronous, so it's a little bit easier to grasp. It does power a good chunk of the web. More than 80% of the web is powered by PHP. And not all of that is WordPress sites, as some would have you to believe. A lot of that is some really decent frameworks out there, such as, Laravel or CodeIgniter and some other ones like that. All right, so the first thing we're going to do tonight is do this little funny slideshow. Super quick. I only have 2 slideshows ever in this whole course, and both of them are tonight, and then I promise no more slideshows for the rest of the course. In fact, there's not very many lectures in this course. It's more practical. We basically get hands-on and we build stuff, right? Because that's really what you want from the end of your career at Georgian. It's a bunch of stuff you've built so that you can show off to potential employers. That's the goal. I think that's the goal. Yeah, so why don't we dive into this one, which is the introductions and expectations. You are welcome to follow along with the slide deck online as well if you want, or you can just watch it here. That's totally fine as well. Never understand why it changes this. There we go. Alrighty. Okay, so I'm Sean. That's me. I don't quite look like that. Not so animated looking, obviously, but it's similar enough. I do like wearing superhero shirts. Unfortunately, with COVID, you guys don't get to experience that part of me because, we're all in lockdown, which kind of sucks. But that's the way it goes. Hold on. I'm just going to collapse the chat thing because it's in the way, and I can't seem to move it out of my way. One moment. The only problem with WebEx is all of the little windows it creates they lap over top. So everything that's on your screen, they are automatically in front of it, which is kind of annoying. Alright. Cool. So yeah, like I said, I'm Sean. I have been programming for 22 years, give or take, maybe a bit more than that actually. I started with HTML, PHP, and CSS and JavaScript, but in full honesty, I didn't code professionally until about 7 years ago. I went to school, I took some courses, I got some papers, and then I went out into the workforce and actually started coding in the industry. But before that, I did it as a hobby. I started with PHP, like many of you are going to start with if you do web programming, and MySQL. That was the flavor at the time. And I coded out a small e-commerce site for a company. Didn't have a payment thing or anything, but that was the first thing I ever programmed. And it was really difficult. There's so many things you don't realize that go into an e-commerce site that force you to have to learn patterns and learn, the methodologies in order to code out what you need to code. Is it SQL? I always read squirrel. That's pretty funny. Yes, it does look like squirrel. No, it's pronounced SQL. It is definitely pronounced SQL. It's even funnier if you knew how many versions of SQL there are. So you would have like Postgres squirrel and My Squirrel if you were to read it that way. And Miss Squirrel. Can't forget Miss Squirrel. So I now currently know proficiently C++, don't work in it very often though, but I do know C++, JavaScript, Ruby and Rails as separated things, Python, PHP, Golang, MongoDB, SQL, DynamoDB, Redis, SQS, Most of the AWS service system, which I just plunk under DevOps because that's the easiest place to put it. Quite a few things. I program in my day job as well, so unlike many instructors that do this full time, or maybe just they're gypsy professors where they travel from school to school and they teach, I actually work in the industry as well. So this is my day job. So anything I'm going to be talking about is influenced by my day job. So my industry experience, I was, up to Friday of last week, a senior developer or a senior software engineer for G-Shift Mintent. It was originally G-Shift, but they were bought out by Mintent. And then unfortunately, due to COVID, it greatly affected our business. We lost a lot of money in clientele, so we were forced to reduce staff. So I wasn't let go, but I did decide that it was time for a change. I was giving working notice, but I decided it was time for a change. So I had till May to find something different, but I decided to find it a little faster. So as of Monday next week, I start with LabX Media, which is out of Midland. They build a platform for, it's kind of like science and medical things. It's a pretty interesting platform. Anyways, I have been with Georgian for 5 years as a part-time instructor. I started with this course, actually, which is kind of funny. I've taught this course about 4 times. It has changed 4 times in what is actually taught. This is the last iteration, hopefully, and I kind of like the format for this one. I'm hoping we can cover a lot of stuff. It really depends on how fast we get through things. I worked for Fireside Agency, which is a great little web shop out of Aurelia. They built some really interesting platforms, like a large mass level marketing. Is that how it's pronounced? Yeah, multi-level marketing. We built a large multi-level marketing platform called Distributors, and then they decided they wanted to just strictly focus on web and not get into web applications. So I decided to leave there, and I went from there to G-Shift. And yeah, I graduated like many of you will hopefully do. In 2014, I took the Web Band program, which stood for Web and Animation. We used Flash, which was weird, but we used Flash, and it was pretty dead then. It's now very dead as of this month. I think it's totally dead. But yeah, we used Flash, but I did learn a little bit of programming, not tons. I had some great teachers, some that you guys have had as well, like Rich Freeman and Scott McCrindle. So I did gain some good experience, and I think you guys may know Jessica Gilfillan. But Jessica and I actually took the same program together. So, and she's actually teaching the other PHP here as well. So, it was a good course. You guys are all programming analysts, I'm assuming. Are any of you web design students? Is anybody in the web program? No? Yeah? Jacob, you are? Cool. Is it called interactive web now, or interactive web media? What do they call it now? Interactive Media Web. Yeah. It seems to be one of the courses that changes its name constantly. You're in neither. You're in CMPG. What's CMPG? I don't actually know what that is. Computer programming? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I know some of you are in the 2-year program, which is like the computer programming courses, and then there's computer programming analyst, which is like a 3-year course. And then there's some that are taking Lakehead courses that happen to cross over into the Georgian Partnership Program as well. So it's like people from everywhere, which is totally fine. That's totally cool. Hopefully we have enough that kind of covers everybody. Yeah, so expectations. My expectations are pretty simple. I mean, this was written based on the idea of you being in class, but, be here still kind of works in a virtual narrative. Obviously, it ensures you have support from me, from your colleagues, and from in-class resources. That being said, all classes will be recorded and posted to YouTube the same night that they are recorded on. You do have to give YouTube a little bit of time to process it, but it will be up. The link will be up at least. So hopefully by tomorrow you should be able to watch it again if you want to. That being said, though, if you have any immediate questions, it is easier if you're in class because then you can ask for support. Ensures you get your money's worth, obviously. Class discussions are a strong part of learning. That being said, we haven't had any great outburst discussions in a long time, probably mostly due to the remote learning aspect of the course. Yeah. Be on time. Treat it like a job. That being said, I always start 2 minutes in. So it's the class is at 7, so we'll always start at 7:02. It seems to be the magic minute for the people that are going to be there that will show up. Those are the people that will show up at that time. So I usually start at 7:02, and that seems to work okay. Shows dedication, prove your value worth to your colleagues, that kind of thing. I think that's more afterwards when you become employees. Treat it like a job. Class starts 2 minutes after the time, which I said. Provides an extra couple of minutes for travel. Obviously, you're not traveling very far, maybe from the kitchen to your office or your bedroom or wherever you happen to be. And provides a bit of a buffer to settle in. So you get in, and it gives you a chance to, get your stuff working and everything else. Participate. Remember, class discussions are a strong part of learning. I do ask for participation. Usually I'll ask a question. Generally, I prefer you just type out the answer into the chat. That tends to be the best way to do it. If it's a little bit more involved, I will open the discussion up to, obviously, voice. But I do ask that you kind of raise your hand by saying, hey, or something into the chat, and then I can call on you. Questions asked help everyone to better understand. That's a key point that I found when I was taking the course myself. Even though I had a fairly strong understanding of PHP at the time, I found that I could ask questions that I felt other students were maybe not asking that they should be asking, especially if they were having difficulty understanding. Maybe that was a bit pretentious, but I don't know. It seemed to work. It seemed to help others. It also helps me learn and remember who you are. So when you ask questions, it helps me put, not so much a face to a voice, but it does help me start to understand who you are and what your capabilities are. And that's pretty good because from being in the industry still, I do have my ear to the ground quite often for new positions and new companies that are hiring, and I tend to recommend those I know. You're going to be the squirrel guy all semester? Everybody's going to call you squirrel. Yeah. All right, academic misconduct, that horrible subject. Just don't plagiarize, don't infringe copyright, trademark, share work with other students, that's not good. Don't steal work from other students. Don't buy and submit projects. That was a new one that showed up about a year or so ago. People going to lynda.com and Coursera and stuff like that and just buying tutorials and then submitting it as their own work. And submit online education program examples as your work. It's obvious. I'm not going to lie to you. It's always obvious because I see all of your labs. I see all of your assignments. So, when all of a sudden you go from having difficulty defining a variable to submitting a full model view controller system, it usually stands out pretty obvious that there's been some academic misconduct, and I always track it down. So just don't. That's the easiest way to deal with that. How I handle academic misconduct, I just give zeros. I zero out whatever the assignment is. There's no recoup after that. You're not going to get it back. The deal is that if you're going to try to get it back, then you're going to have to talk to your program coordinator and explain to them why you received an academic misconduct, which usually results in you wind up getting a mark against you with the registrar's office. So I just find it's better just to zero it out. It saves me paperwork, and you get enough of those and you'll fail the class, right? So that's usually the way it works. If you're unclear what you're about to do is academic misconduct, it's always a good idea to reach out to me. That being said, there's always this confusion of, how do we use libraries? Is that considered academic misconduct? Libraries Libraries aren't considered academic misconduct if they're providing a small part of the service to your application that you're building. Where I have a problem is when the library is the thing you're basically submitting, right? When it's the whole encompassment of your application, then I have an issue. But again, if you're unclear and you're unsure whether or not this is infringing, you just reach out to me and I can let you know. I've had students in the past say, I was going to use Bootstrap, but I didn't want to get caught for academic misconduct. Bootstrap is something I totally agree with. Go ahead and use Bootstrap. That's okay. It's things like, downloading a project from lynda.com or finding somebody's GitHub project and submitting that instead. All right. Any questions about any of that stuff before I move on to due dates? No? Oakley dokley. All right, so due dates, potentially full marks if submitted on the day it is due. That's not quite right. I did mean to modify this. I thought I did. Maybe I didn't. Due dates work like this. For quizzes, the due date is the next class by the beginning of class. And if it's labs, it's by the next class by midnight. So that's the way they work. Quizzes will only ever be 10 questions or less. And labs are meant to be done within 15 to a half hour, right? So they're meant to be quick and consumable, easy for you guys to do and easy for me to mark. That's the idea. Group work, I don't know if I'm going to do group work. Group work always leads to the problem where one person tends to take the whole load onto themselves while another person just lets them do it. I kind of hate that, so I'm not sure if I'm going to do group work. If I do, it's going to be done in kind of a different way where you will be assigned a part that you have to do and you will be expected to explain it, which seems tedious and more effort than I'm really willing to put in. So we may not do group work. It's much easier for me just to mark individual projects. I don't know. I'll come back to that. Agenda for the average class. Previous class review. Obviously, we didn't have a class before this, so there is no previous class review. Introducing the day's agenda, so the stuff that we're going to cover. Today, it's just introductions, expectations, the tools, because that usually takes like a whole class to download all of the tools and get them all working, especially considering we'll be using WAMP, which can be a bit of a train wreck. Out of curiosity, I know today is your first class. Did you have SQL before this class? Like relational database. Did you have relational database before this class? Yes, that's awesome. Okay, I always like to be first. And the reason why I like to be first is because the various relational database teachers we use, they tend to install MySQL in various different ways. If I'm first, then I can guarantee that you guys have all the same version and it's all installed the same way and it will be great for you out of the gate. Awesome, that's cool. Okay, interactive lecture. Yes, interactive lecture basically is what I was saying before. It's a practical. So we'll be doing more coding in this class than lecturing, right? I code a little bit and then I go on a rambling thing for a little while and then I come back to coding is usually how it works. 2 breaks as needed, totaling 20 minutes. It's always 2 breaks because it takes a lot out of us to just sit here and talk for so long. Plus it gives you a chance to kind of, take in all the information that I give you. Communicating with me, Slack, 100% Slack. It's always the best way to communicate with me. Already had a student using it, thank you. Slack is the best way because I will respond. It says within 24 hours, that's not true. I tend to have OCD about the little notification icons that show up on my phone, so I tend to respond to them pretty quick. So if you send me a Slack message, worst case scenario will be within 8 hours. That's only because LabX is very, very adamant and frowns upon social media use during your workday. So because of that, it will likely have to wait. But otherwise, I will always respond. If you send me a Slack message in the evening, you'll get a response almost immediately. Email, however, is a little different. Georgian every so often changes my password, and I don't notice for a really long time, and then 48 hours has passed by and I realize, hey, I haven't gotten any emails from Georgian in a while. And then so I go and check and it turns out my password has changed. So it's not reliable. Not to mention, it's the one thing I don't check as often. So please make sure, if it's important, that you just use Slack. Not to mention, Slack is an industry's tool. I know a lot of people love using Discord, and I did consider switching. But the industry doesn't use Discord. The industry uses Slack. So, are you able to send a message there so I can see it's working? I can actually see whether or not you're in the Slack channel, Marcos. Give me 1 second. I can just send you a direct message. Yep, I've got you. Let me just send you hello. Whoops. Let me put hello in the proper spot. There you go. Message sent. Awesome. So the other way you can communicate with me is by WebEx. Now, here's the thing. Haha, that's funny. Here's the thing. I love a good pun. The appointments by WebEx are definitely by appointment, and only if you absolutely need to, okay? Most times I can resolve whatever issue you have in Slack. Ways that you can be helpful to me is by not sending me messages arbitrarily saying this doesn't work, okay? Tell me what doesn't work, what you did beforehand that led to it not working, and then a link to your code. So ways you can share code is Dropbox, Boxy, Google Drive, OneDrive, but at some point we're all going to learn Git. Have you guys already had Git? Like, have you had teachers kind of enforce Git? Or am I your first Git person? Oh, well, awesome. Guess what? You guys are going to learn Git. So Git, again, another huge industry tool. Something you're definitely going to be using in your co-ops, definitely going to be using out in the industry, regardless of whether you do web programming or not. We will definitely learn Git in this class. So we'll all sign up for GitHub, which is an online repository system. We'll all download Git and install it on our computers, and we'll learn how to create repositories, and we'll learn how to push code. So ideally, if that's the case, I don't think we do that tonight. I might be wrong. We might set up Git tonight and do a first Git push tonight. We'll see. We'll see. So, your tools. A working computer. I mean, at the very bare minimum, you have to have a working computer, okay? I have had students show up with no computer before. It's very weird, but I have had it happen. You need a working computer. Unfortunately, you do. That being said, it doesn't need to be a beast, right? Maybe you have a Raspberry Pi kicking around. That works. That totally works. For this type of stuff, it totally works. But you do need a working computer. VS Code, if you want to. I'm not being pushy. I use VS Code as my IDE. You guys are welcome to use whatever IDE you want. I'm assuming you all had HTML before this class at some point. Yeah. And did you have it with Scott? Who'd you have it with? Who was your teacher? So that usually tells me what IDE you're using. Scott? All right, so if you had Scott, you were using either Atom or Brackets, I'm guessing? Oh, VS Code. Some of you have been using VS Code. Awesome. Okay, so for those of you using Atom, not a big deal. Works kind of similar to VS Code. I use VS Code, and you may want to switch because I know all the fancy little shortcuts in VS Code. So, and I tend to go over them, like multi-cursors and, I don't know, moving lines up and down and duplications and stuff like that. So if you switch, you'll learn all those little shortcuts as well with me. But I think some of them work in Atom anyways. WAMP server, that will be the PHP, MySQL, Apache environment that we're going to install and use. There are other PHP stacks that you can use, like XAMPP and stuff. However, do any of you have Anju for a SQL teacher for your relational database? Because Anju does prefer that you use WAMP as it uses MySQL as opposed to MariaDB. So I think you should just stick with WAMP. It's probably the best way to go. Once you have WAMP, because none of you have had a relational database class, once you have WAMP, in your relational database class, your teacher may instruct you to install something else like XAMPP or MySQL. You need to inform them that you already have WAMP. Okay, that's very, very important. Otherwise, you will wind up with port conflicts and a lot of issues, and that teacher's going to want to murder themselves. So, to save them a lot of hassle, just tell them, we're good, we have MySQL, it's already there. Okay? I will make sure before you leave tonight that you have MySQL already installed, so we'll be good. All right, this link that's showing up in the worst color known to man on black, scm.education, that's your lesson plans or your textbook, so to speak. I will link to it often. It's my own personal education site that I built. I write all the source material that's there. I create all the stupid pictures and diagrams and graphs and things that you will find in there. It takes a lot of effort. I would definitely appreciate it if you view it. It actually surprisingly gets 15,000 hits per month. Not sure why. I think it has to do with SCM, which also stands for Supply Chain Management. So I think there's a lot of people hitting that site for the wrong reason. And then YouTube. Obviously, all my recorded lessons will go up to YouTube, and I will share the link in that evening. Things I assume you know. I assume by this point that you've had an intro to programming class. I assume that you've had some sort of introductory programming class. What language did you guys use in your intro to programming class? I imagine some was Java, some may have been C++. All of you were basically Java? Cool. So that's fine. That's totally cool. That's fine, Goggin Deep. I just saw your message there. We will fix that at the time. We'll deal with that in a bit. Yeah, try to uninstall it first. That's a good idea. Oh, you had C++. Some of you had C#. Okay, that's awesome. The idea, though, is that you understand these basic things. What a variable is and how it works, right? That's super important, that you understand that a variable is a container and that it stores a value, right? As long as you have those basics down, we're golden. What a decision structure is, so an if condition, as long as you understand how an if-else or if-else or whatever, as long as you understand the basic concept of that, that's good. What a function is, so hopefully you guys have written a function by this point, and what its purpose is. Basically, it's a block of code that you can reuse and call by name. And then basic programming logic, like super basic programming logic. Not even basic programming logic, just basic math. Like as long as you understand basic bed maths. I'm not even talking like sophisticated stuff like trigonometry or calculus or any of that type of stuff. I'm talking like 2 + 2 level math, right? As long as you understand that kind of stuff, we are golden. You will make it through this course pretty good. All right, so that's stuff I'm going to assume you already know. I hear people dropping out, so hopefully I haven't terrified some people. All right, cool. Any questions about any of that? No? None? Nada? Awesome. Let's talk about the syllabus. We're powering through. I mean, it takes forever to get through all this stuff. Okay, so the syllabus is online. There's the course description for you. You can find the course descriptions under that website that I never seem to gain access to. I don't know why, but whatever. The course descriptions are there. There is the link to our education thing. If you click on that link, it will take you to our course outline for the term. Some of these may change. Do not take these as a substitution to class. They are to augment your class, okay? So sometimes the information inside these will be inaccurate because we will have learned a different way or a different technique, or we may have used a different technique. So don't take these as fact. Definitely use these to augment, not replace. All right. That's me. You can contact me at that email address, but preferably use this Slack link and join that Slack link. That's the best way to do that. Office hours, again, by appointment only. Expectations for success, I mean, it's just generally obvious. Do all the assignments, do all the quizzes, do all the labs, and you'll be golden, right? There will be 4 quizzes altogether. There's no quizzes or assignments tonight, but there will be quizzes and assignments starting next week. So the midterm and the final are heavily weighted in this course. Testing in general is heavily weighted in this course, which I thought was weird, but that's the way the college wants it done. 40% of your marks are in testing. So 10% into quizzes, 15% into your midterm, and 15% into your final. Okay, so pretty hefty. We will have 5 labs in this class in total. Like I said, there will be no more than roughly 15 minutes to a half hour to complete. Each one will be worth 7%. And then there will be one major project that will be assigned in the 10th week, I think it is. I think it's the 10th week. And you will have those 3 weeks to do it. The project, major project, will take you about maybe 3 to 4 hours to complete in total, will be the goal. Sometimes it takes people more, depending on the amount of work they want to put into it. All right. Ignore this. Like I said, don't ever take these lesson plans as the thing. These are often not correct. There is not 10 in-class quizzes or 12 labs. Oh, you can't even see that screen. What am I talking about? All right, let's continue on. Sorry. It's been a long night already. I have already done a whole course tonight. Can you show how to use Slack? Kinda. Not really. I mean, This is what Slack looks like. So I have multiple channels or workspaces. Slack basically breaks down like that. So these are workspaces that are connected to other businesses or anything like that. Like this is my friend group. This is North OT. If you guys haven't joined North OT, you should consider it. That's an old computer studies. That's the one for the college faculty that nobody uses. And then this is ours. So ours has about 400 plus members in it, I think, at this point. There's 3 current college instructors in there, and we've been trying to get more to use it. Mostly because the more college instructors we get, when somebody asks a question, anybody available can answer the question. So it gives almost immediate response time to students and their questions, which is good. This Comp 1006-Winter, this one here, shared with Jessica Gilfillan. I don't know if you guys ever had Jess, but it's shared with her and her PHP classes as well. So you can feel free to join this channel. The way you join a channel is you just click on the plus sign next to channels, and you can browse the channels, and you can find that channel and click on it, and it will take it to you, right? And then you can join that channel. I don't think so. I think Discord's a different company than Slack. I'm pretty sure they are different. Slack has like a paid model as well. The free model is fine, but the paid model allows you all to have like a cloud service for files and things like that. Yeah, Slack is super easy to use. It's super easy. Once you've joined Slack, it's really just a matter of joining a channel and typing in, or direct messaging somebody by just clicking a plus sign, choosing the person you want to direct message. I mean, Marcos, I can share yours. I think it's pretty generic. So here's my message to Marcos testing his, right? So super, super simple. You just type the message, off it goes, and that's it, right? And then they can respond. So if you have any more information about Slack, we can always go over it more. I don't know how to go more in depth. Oh, yeah, no, Leopold is in my Comp 2068 class, so that's JavaScript frameworks, which you guys will have in your 4th semester. Yeah, but he's from the Lakehead side, not the Georgian side. So it's my first Lakehead course, actually. It's whack. All right. Okay, so tonight is Introduction, Tools, and Deployment to the Internet. This is our next 13 weeks, or 14 weeks, I guess, if you include reading week. Next week will be array and passing data, which might seem weird that that takes up a whole class, but it literally takes up a whole class. It's a big subject. Because with JavaScript in arrays, we get into some of their global array systems, like globals, sessions, and cookies. So there's a few pieces there. We're going to look at error handling and unit testing. So we will talk a little bit about unit testing in this course. We'll look at PHP unit. We're going to look at creating and reading data with PHP and MySQL. So that's the first part of our CRUD, which CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. We're going to start with creating and reading data with PHP and MySQL in week 4. And then we're going to take a look at updating and deleting data in week 5. The reason why I wait till week 4 to touch PHP and MySQL together is it gives your relational database teacher a good chance to get in line with me, so that we're basically in line and we're completing kind of the same stuff from week to week. Because your first 3 weeks in your relational database course will be just reading data. So that should keep us in line so that I'm not going ahead of them. 6 will be data validation, sanitization, and normalization. So that's the 3 major steps that we take with any data that we get from a user. Week 7 will be a midterm, which will cover those 6 weeks. Then we have reading week, so no classes during reading week. And then week 8 we'll be talking about parent and child relationships. So you can kind of think of that as, yeah, I can expand the screen, sorry. Where's the little plus button? There we go. Sorry, I know my ultra wide makes it difficult sometimes for people to see it. So parent-child relationships, you can think of those like an author has written many books. So the parent would be the author and the books would be the children. That kind of thing. Including files and normalizing paths. This is a new piece that I've added every time I've taught this course, but it's newer being added into Jessica Gilfillan's course. The reason being is that it's such a huge concept when you actually start working with PHP out in the real world that you understand how files and paths are connected, right? It's a very important part, especially when we go to start releasing our files up to AWS, which will be in one of these. Oh, deploying to the internet. Yeah, that's not happening tonight. I don't know why that's in there. That is definitely not happening tonight. That's in the wrong spot. Week 10, authentication part number 1, and week 11 will be authentication part 2. The reason why it's 2 full weeks is because we get into users and private versus public data and what authentication strategies we can use in order to protect that data. So it's kind of a big subject, so that takes 2 weeks. And then in week 12, we'll look at working with files, so reading, writing, and uploading files all together, which is great because we're using AWS, so uploading files should be easy. You guys get your own EC2. You should have all received an email from the Georgian IT telling you how to use your AWS account. When it comes time, though, I will instruct you on how to set it up. I haven't actually set mine up yet, but I will help you set yours up. And that's basically it for the syllabus. Any questions about the syllabus? No? Cool. All right, I'm going to drop the screen downsized a little bit, and we are going to talk about what is web programming a little bit. So we're going to introduce web programming. I wonder if it's easier to do the thing first. Yes, it is. All right. There we go. Let me just, from the beginning. You didn't get an email about AWS? Okay. If you haven't received an email about the AWS, check your spam folders first, because it did go to my spam folder, which was weird. So check your spam folder. Make sure it's not in your spam folder. If it's not in your spam folder, send me an email with your student name and number, and then I will fire that off to Ali and get your credentials created. Okay? All right, cool. Introduction to web programming. What are we doing here, right? Quick insight into web programming. So the goal by the end of this course is to stop seeing the web as just a user, so that when you see a website, you start to see it as a developer. You're starting to look at it and understand it more intrinsically, right? That you're actually seeing the HTML, kind of like the Matrix, right? You can see the red dress, but you're seeing it in code. So let's talk about users versus developers. So a user enjoys the end product, right? They enjoy the delicious meal at McDonald's. They enjoy what the developer has created for them. But it's the developer who's responsible for designing and creating that meal that the user gets to enjoy. And there's so many different aspects to what the developer has to do and produce for the user in order for the user to enjoy their food. It's not even necessarily, in this scenario, it's not even necessarily the fact that it's a burger, fries, and a pop. It's the fact that it's a very bright and vibrant burger with 2 pieces of cheese on a very nice bun, and that the fries are in this nice box and they're convenient to get the French fries out of the box, and that the drink is kept cold by an insulated cup. There's more to what the developer considers than what the user actually receives. You know, like the developer considers a lot more aspects to the user's experience than the user even realizes. Actually, one of the best quotes I've ever heard is that user experience should be invisible. And that is a cool idea, that the user shouldn't even be aware of this wonderful experience that they're having. So let's take a look at the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, right? Enjoyed by millions of tourists every year. And we all know who created the Sistine Chapel. Well, maybe some of you don't. It was this guy, right? Michelangelo created the Sistine Chapel. Only not the Ninja Turtle. This old dude. This old dude created the Sistine Chapel. He painted it, and it's a gorgeous experience, supposedly. I've never been, personally. I've never been out of Canada, actually. But supposedly it's a gorgeous experience. Has anybody ever actually seen it for real? Like, been there and seen it? No? Yeah. No. Same. Not yet. It's something I would like to see. I think it'd be cool. The user in this scenario, he looks stylish for all occasions. He has the hairstyle, the mullet. He knew what he wanted. He reached out to the developer and told them, this is what I want. I want business in the front, party in the back. I want to be, the most stylish person on the block in the year 2000 with a 1980s haircut. And so he reached out to these developers and they created his style. But the developer needs to interpret what the user wants and understand the user fully in order to create the end product for the user to enjoy. So sometimes we have to ask a lot of questions so we don't wind up with a mullet, right? User versus developer. You're going to see this quite often. User versus developer. This isn't a war, though. Don't treat your user as an opponent. Treat your user as an individual that you're trying to help or support, right? So, users sees a list of options. When we look at a user and they see, this drop-down box, they click the little button and it says Sydney, Melbourne, Cromwell, and Queenstown, right? And they choose their option and they move on, right? Perfectly normal thing that a user sees. However, a developer sees the code. They see a select box, they see options under the select, and that these are how they're created, right? They see what their values might look like in order to pass the value back on to another system. They see the actual code that creates the select box. User might see a header, right? Google Canada. That's it. That's all they need to see. That's all they need to care about. However, the developer sees the header as a div style with a bunch of, CSS, inline CSS, which is interesting that Google does that. Might have an onload JavaScript event. Has this nested div, which is the actual logo subtext of Canada there. Hopefully you don't have to deal with any Black Friday mobs in development. That doesn't seem like... you could always do like a flash sale. Now you get my pun? Flash sale? That's pretty funny. Anyways. How a developer sees a header, they see, the element styles that are involved, the backgrounds, like the CSS styles and everything that's involved. They see the HTML. They see this onload event. How a user sees an image gallery. They get to enjoy the final styles. Yes, I agree. Inline styles. Ew. A user gets to see this beautiful image gallery. They get to see all the nice pictures. They might see the transitions between images, the sliding effects, all that wonderful thing. But what we see is the technologies that we need to implement in order to create this wonderful slideshow. HTML5, a photo swipe gallery. Maybe our content is coming from MySQL. We're using Amazon Web Services for parts of it. We're using CSS for part of it. We see the technologies required in order to create the CSS slideshow, right? So why web development? Why would we choose web applications over desktop applications? Right? So one of the biggest reasons that I consider when we take a look at web versus desktop is flexibility. So when we look at a desktop application, we need to understand that desktop applications have to be built for multiple platforms. Not everybody owns a Windows machine. Sometimes people have Linux, sometimes people have Mac, right? And then there's others too, like Solaris and Raspberry Pi and things like that. So we have to consider there's a lot of operating systems out there, and how big of an audience do we need our application to reach? We could use Java, right, which is multi-platformed, or we could use the web, which is truly multi-platform, extensible worldwide, right? So anywhere, any operating system we want to use, we can definitely access through the web. So the web does give us a lot more flexibility, versatility, and exposure. 100% for exposure. So how does the web work? Well, we're going to do a super simple overview of web page communication. What happens when we type an address in our address bar? Let's first take a look at a static website. So a static website is just HTML and CSS. It's literally what you guys built in your HTML class. There's no PHP backends, there's no servers or anything like that. It's literally just the static website loaded in the web browser. So when we access a static website, right, we being us, the users, right, and our clients, we use a client in order to access those websites. Now, a client doesn't have to necessarily be limited to browsers. Sometimes a client can be your Steam machine, or it can be Origin or Epic, or it might be your Apple TV. These all act as clients. Clients all make requests to some endpoint for information, right? So I want my login. I want to be able to log in. So I want the login page. So I make a request to, steam.com/login. And that request gets fired off to a server somewhere where I'm hosting my website. It gets fired off to that server. Maybe it's Azure, maybe it's AWS. And then the server looks for the request that we're asking for, finds that information, and responds back to us, right? Generally, the way the server finds the information for a static website is just by looking through the file system. It's going to reach out, look for index.html, and it's a literal file called index.html, as you guys will remember creating them, sitting in a file folder on a server somewhere, and it says, oh, found it, and it returns that information back and to the user and renders that HTML in the browser. The HTML on the server is just raw text, but once the HTML hits the browser, the browser itself has the ability to render that text, has the ability to render CSS and JavaScript and those type of technologies in the browser. But that's it. That's all the information that happens for a static website. User requests the site, file is found, return, sent back to the browser, browser renders the file. Let's look at a dynamic website, which is what we'll be building in this class. So in a dynamic website, again, start with the same user using the same client. So they're going to take their client and they're going to make a request. Again, that request gets sent off to a server. But after this point, that's where things begin to change. The server is going to look at the extension of the request. So they're looking for index.php. What's going to happen is the server is going to see if it has some sort of intermediary software that can parse that file. So it has PHP installed on the server. So it says, cool, I'm going to hand you this PHP file, and you're going to render this PHP file and convert it into HTML, and then you're going to give it back to me, and I'm going to give it back to the client. The reason why the file would have to be changed into HTML is because the browser is limited on what it's able to read and render. Browsers can only read and render HTML, CSS, and JavaScript reliably. Okay, there are some browsers that can read other types of languages, but reliably, Mozilla, Chrome, Edge, they can only read those three languages: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There are other things that this is going to look for, right? So it goes and requests the PHP file. The PHP file comes back. However, that PHP file may have other dependencies. It may have to need to access the database. So this is a database thing that you see here. It may need to access, if it loads, whoops, maybe I'm on the wrong thing. There we go. It may need to load emails and send emails and then return with email responses. Or it may need to retrieve data from emails. I've had to build systems like that before, where we actually collected data from emails. Once it's figured out and it's got everything from its files, from its databases, and from its emails, or wherever it's getting its data from, and it's parsed the PHP into HTML, it's going to return the response to the user. We're going to do this, but we're going to do it with just the database. We might do a little bit of file reading, but just the database and the PHP binary, and that's what we're going to use for our stack. Our stack is called the LAMP stack, which stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So when we compare a static site, we can compare how different things are interpreted. So for a static site, the data and content that you have on the site is generally entered directly into the HTML page, right? So it's hard-coded right in the page. There's no changing it. What is what you get, right? Whereas with a dynamic site, the content is pulled from some sort of external source, whether that's a database, an API, a file system, or an email system. It's gaining the data dynamically and populating the site with that data dynamically. In a static site, everyone receives the same data or content, right? Because, again, it's statically entered into the website. It's hard-coded. There's no changing that. Whereas in a dynamic website, the data and content can be customized for the user because we can take a look at information about the user when they log in and provide them specific information back. That's not always the case, so it's not always login. Sometimes we take a look at the localization data, so for where they are, and send them back language-specific data, which is also helpful as well. Static data content mutation can be performed only with client-side scripting and therefore circumvented. So if you wanted to mutate the data and you were in the client, sure, you can open up the developer tools, you can right-click on something and modify the color, but the second you refresh that page, it's gone. It disappears. And that's because your static site does not have the ability to maintain state, meaning that change you made can't be saved. There's no place to save it. So dynamic websites, they, however, give you the ability to perform changes like that and save them. So when you create data content mutation, it can be performed with the server-side scripting, and therefore it is guarded. So you can actually modify the data and save it in a database or save it in a file, some ways for it to be always there. User input is sanitized by the client-side validation, which isn't secure. So once again, with a static site, when you enter any information into any kind of form and you submit it, yeah, we can validate it all, right? We can say, hey, this field's required or it must match this pattern. But at the end of the day, all the user has to do is shut off JavaScript and all of your client-side validation is for naught. Whereas with dynamic websites, their input gets to the server, and then the server can perform validation, sanitization, and normalization, and basically either reject the content or just rip out anything that might be malicious out of it before it ever gets entered into a database. So what is data? Well, a look at data breaking down a web app's data system. Let's take a look at Facebook in kind of a global 30,000 foot view. And Amazon. Why are we doing both of those? A thorough example. So these are bonus slides that were just in here for that. For some reason, I never pulled out. We're going to look at Rich's example and take a look at dynamic data from Rich Freeman. So I kind of rebuilt this. But like he says, a web application is a lot like a pub or a bar or a club, right? Depending on what you call it. So both have something people want to see or use, right? So when you go to a bar, generally you either want to see your friends, engage in some social experience, or possibly have a drink, right? Facebook, you want to be able to surf and look at your pages and like and dislike and that kind of thing and add your personal feedback or just meme the hell out of your posts, right? But you want to have those kind of experiences. Whereas with the bar, you want something, right? Possibly drinks. Both the drinks and the data are kept behind a walled barrier though, right? At the end of the day, there is this restriction you have that stops you from gaining access. With a database, it's usually an authentication system, right? So for Facebook, you have to log in. If you don't log in, you can't access that data. Whereas with the bar, it's a bouncer. So you can kind of think of the login as like the bouncer for your Facebook. So how do users get what they want? Well, something has to listen to our request. Somebody has to be able to interpret our request and authenticate us. So with Facebook, it's our server. Our server is going to be responsible with authenticating us and providing us back what we want. Where with the bar, obviously it's your bartender. Our request has to be transmitted to where the drinks and /data are stored, right? So, hey, I want a Shirley Temple. Well, obviously I have to say that to the bartender. And, hey, I really like this post. I click my button. Our requests are made. Instructions are then issued based on our request. If things run smoothly, the result of our request eventually gets returned to us. Yay, we've got drinks. And hopefully everyone is happy, like that guy and that guy. So why did I choose PHP? It's kind of funny because that is a question I get asked usually every semester, why I chose PHP. And the real reason is I didn't choose it. The college chose it. So 80% of the web is currently made up by PHP. Yes, if you go look at popularity, you will see that other languages are far more popular than PHP. However, due to the fact that PHP is super easy to learn, has very simple syntax, it's loosely typed, right? Which tends to be a hiccup for you coming from Java. Abundant amount of resources and a stupid large community. It makes it really accessible. So a lot of people use PHP, and the college definitely wants you to learn it because it is something that you're likely going to encounter, especially when it comes to, WordPress, Joomla, Drupal frameworks that are out there, Laravel, CodeIgniter. There's so many different PHP frameworks out there that you will likely encounter. PHP has an okay object-oriented programming implementation, which has been improved, so that is old. We will be using the improved version from PHP 7. And then a lot of frameworks are out there as well that are super cool for PHP. It's also great as a prototyping language to teach students the fundamentals of server-side programming. It makes it a lot easier for you guys to learn when you're not dealing with things like the asynchronous nature of JavaScript. So what are our other options for server-side language? Well, there's a ton of them, right? There's Golang, there's Rust, there's Python, there's Rails, or Ruby, if you want to break it down to its smaller form. There's C#, right? You can do ASP.NET. There's also Java service pages. So there's a lot of different options that are out there that you have choices, and I do recommend exploring those choices as well. But what I would recommend as a new student to web programming, that you choose something and become very proficient at it and then look for jobs within that realm, as opposed to knowing 25 things kind of okay. All right, so we're going to take a break because I think we've earned it. It's now 8 o'clock. Any questions about any of the stuff that I covered? Yeah, that catches most people, right? So that's one of the biggest questions I get asked all the time is, what should I learn? And I always say the same thing. JavaScript. The whole bloody stack. Yes, the class time will be the same every Monday, Mohit. Awesome. Glad you like it. Yeah, so JavaScript is an easy stack. It's a cheap stack to learn in. It's cheap for businesses because it scales so well. So a lot of them want you to know JavaScript. And the good news is that the college gives you 2 JavaScript courses. You get an Intro to JavaScript course, and then you get a JavaScript Frameworks course, which you'll likely have with me. So that's really where you want to be. Yeah. And then the other thing, as a personal learning experience, AWS. Like looking at the AWS pipeline and learning services in AWS. That is a very good benefit. You can't go wrong. You'll find jobs all day if you learn AWS and JavaScript. You'll find them all day long. All right, I'm going to pause my recording. Better unpause. Move this guy over here. Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about the Apache and MySQL servers. So in order to use PHP, we're going to be working with the LAMP stack. So that's Linux, Apache, Mongo, and PHP. Now, obviously, the Linux side is a little bit of more of a suggestion because we're not using Linux, right? However, when we deploy to Amazon, they will be deployed to a Linux box on Amazon. That's the way it works. Yeah, if it's new info in the new email, then yeah, they're new boxes. And that actually makes sense because the old boxes probably didn't have PHP on them. The old boxes were probably just straight up basic web servers, probably from just Apache. There was probably no PHP. So these new ones will likely have PHP on them as well. And MySQL. So that's probably why. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about that because 2 of those components that are inside that stack are servers. And that's an important thing to comprehend because with servers, there's a certain amount of rules that you need to understand. And I didn't used to really get into depth about this, but I started doing it after the 3rd time I taught this course due to common conflicts that were showing up between my course and the relational database course as well as the ASP.NET course, because at one point they taught all 3 in the same semester. So the issue lies in the fact of how a server works, right? So what is a server? A server does exactly as its name implies. It serves something, right? It serves a web page. It serves a database. It serves a file system. The server is responsible for serving something to the end user. In order for a server to work, it has to have some way to be able to communicate and listen. And the way that is handled is by using IP addresses that connect to the server along with ports. So the IP, for example, might point to a computer, and then the port will point to a specific service on that computer. So in the example of a LAMP stack, generally you build the LAMP stack on one machine, right? So you have Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP all in the same box. Well, two of those are servers, right? The Apache is the web server that actually listens to incoming web requests, and the MySQL server is the one that's going to listen for database requests. So how do we make sure that when a person is connecting to that server, right, which will have only one IP address, that it knows which service, the Apache or the MySQL service, that we need to connect to? And the way it knows that is through ports. It uses ports, so that's when you see, for example, an address that has the 4 digits, but then it has a colon with a port number at the end of it, right? So for example, 127.0.0.1 colon 3000 means I am trying to access this IP address at the port 3000. And whatever service happens to be listening on that port, then so be it. So why am I explaining this? Well, one of the issues that I've had in several different classes with PHP is that the relational database teacher will have the students install MySQL-D. WAMP, when it installs MySQL, it installs it and then utilizes port 3607. MySQL-D utilizes port 3607. This creates a conflict between these two, and it causes a lot of issues for students when they're trying to do MySQL stuff. So generally what usually happens is the database teacher will tell you guys to shut WAMP off, which is totally fine. But then that MySQL-D service sits there and runs in the background, and the next time you take your PHP class, you're going to have problems, because the only way to shut off the MySQL-D service is by going into the services in Windows, finding that service, and killing it. That's the only way to do it. So the easiest way to handle this is we're going to install WAMP tonight. You will have a working MySQL service. There is no reason for you to install any other MySQL service whatsoever. So no other packages. Don't reinstall WAMP. Don't install XAMPP. Don't install MAMP. Don't install another MySQL service whatsoever. What you will do when you go to your relational database class tomorrow, or whenever your class happens to be, you will just open up WAMP and let it connect. Once it's connected, you're good to go. You can go ahead and use MySQL after that point. Okay? So it's very important that you understand that, and the reason has to do with how servers and ports work. No, you don't need to delete XAMPP. It depends. Who's your relational database teacher, Marcin? If it's Anju, yes, you do have to delete XAMPP. She is very adamantly against it. Are you using a Windows machine or a Mac? Windows? Yeah. So if you have Anju, then yes, you will have to remove XAMPP because she teaches MySQL and she has issues with the Maria database. The Maria database, some of the commands are slightly different, so it can create some problems. If you don't have Anju, I don't think any other relational database teacher I've encountered cares. You have a Mac and you're using XAMPP? Yeah, that's the thing. I have no idea how Anju deals with Macs because I think she prefers people to use MAMP, M-A-M-P. I'm totally fine. I don't care if you use XAMPP. It doesn't make a difference as long as you know where to put your files. That's all that matters. Does anybody else have a Mac, out of curiosity? Jacob, you're using a Mac? So you're going to have to install MAMP, unfortunately. Or you can install XAMPP. Either one will work. You have 2 physical machines, Marcos, or you're running a dual boot? Oh, you have 2 physical machines. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter which one you want to use. You're on Windows, that's fine. Then you just follow along, Una. Okay, so except for Jacob, I would actually recommend just installing XAMPP. If you type XAMPP into the browser, which is just XAMMP, it's under Apache Friends. The only thing is, though, is this Maria requirement. Jacob, do you have Andrew as your relational database teacher before we go any further? Okay. The only thing is, though, you can't install WAMP, Jacob. Because WAMP is only for Windows. The closest thing for you to use would be MAMP, and it gets a bit more complicated. If you don't have Andrew, just reinstall XAMPP. Lyle would? Okay, cool. Yeah, Lyle doesn't care. Awesome. Okay, so just install XAMPP back on, Jacob, because it's way easier than using MAMP. MAMP requires you to do some funny stuff with Finder in order to get it to work. Okay, so for the rest of you, we're not using XAMPP, we're going to use WAMP. So I have provided the link to WAMP underneath our lesson plan. So if we go to gc.blackboard, go to PHP, go to weekly learning, go to the first class, and there's the weekly meeting link. Underneath that, you'll see introductions and the course lesson plan. If you click that, it opens up the lesson plan I'm using to teach the class. So if you scroll down, you're looking for installing WAMP. You can even just hit Control F on your keyboard and do a find for that. And in very super tiny, super small text, you will see this link. What I would like you to do is click on that link. It's going to tell you that it's downloading. It starts in like 1 second, and then it will start to download the WAMP server. So I'm going to let you guys download that, and I'm going to go to Add Remove Programs, and I'm going to remove my version of it so that you can follow along as I install it. Also, I would recommend installing the Visual C++ Redistributable 2012 package if you're on Windows. So you just click that thing. Don't download the Bing wallpaper. It should install, and you should see this VCR Redist x64 exe file. Oh, you have to click on the link. It didn't just automatically download. Once you've downloaded this Visual C++, my God, I can't talk. Once you've downloaded it, please install it first and then reboot your computer, and I'll just wait for you guys to go and come back. Don't install WAMP before you install that. It's likely you already have it. Hopefully, maybe many of you have played video games, you likely already have it, but some of you likely don't. So if you just install it, then it's guaranteed that you have it, and then you can go ahead and reboot. And I'll wait for you guys to come back. Let me load up the participants so I can see who leaves and who comes back. Yeah, you can also check underneath your Add Remove Programs if you don't want to reboot. Yes, Gerline, you do. Yeah. Yeah, if you got the option to modify it, you don't need to do anything with it then, Thomas. You can just close it. If it installs, then you'll need to reboot. Sorry, yeah, that's correct. How did I get to the Microsoft link? It's in the lesson plan there. Right here. I'll just copy and paste it actually for you, so it's a little bit simpler to get to. There you go. You're welcome. It depends on the binary. So the Visual C++ that you're downloading is a compiler. So depending on what the software uses to do its compilation, you need different versions of the compiler. Yeah. Yeah, I would remove it. Because the version we're using is PHP 7.4. I mean, you can add PHP 7.4, but it's a lot trickier than just uninstalling and reinstalling. What's the default one, Jonathan? Is it not PHP 7.4? Is that the default one, or is it 7.3? I can't remember. I think you don't need to change any of those settings. Whatever setting is there, Jonathan, is fine. I didn't change any of the settings when it came to the PHP version. I just left it what it was. Where does it show it? Yeah, because it installs PHP 7.4, 7.3 anyways. Yeah, just leave it. Yeah, that's totally fine. 7.4 is perfectly fine. Yeah. All right. I'm just going to wait for everybody who has restarted to come back. And then once they're back, I'll go ahead and do my installation from here for those of you that want to follow along. Would CyberDuck work for PHP? What is CyberDuck? I have never heard of CyberDuck. A Libre server. Yeah. I don't know. You'd be on your own because I don't know how to support this. But you could always try if you wanted to. Yeah, I've never used this before. But I don't think it provides... You would still need to install PHP. That's the thing. I would just use XAMPP, Jacob. It'd be way easier for you. Yeah, after you restart, Gerline, download WAMP and let me know when you're done. Huh, I'll have to check that out. I'll have to reach out to Scott and ask him about it. Do you guys get your first JavaScript class this semester? Your intro to JavaScript? Yeah, I know you did a little bit in your HTML class, but you guys do get a full one. You had it last semester? It's the Comp 1073 is the course code for it. I think they might do it the semester after, but... Oh, okay, semester 3, yeah. So my JavaScript course is in semester 4, so yeah, it makes sense that you get one in semester 3. So we lost about 4 people, so I'm assuming there's about 4 people to come back. So we'll just give it another 5 minutes, and then we'll move ahead. What's the problem you're having downloading the WAMP? Yes, it'll be posted on YouTube. Gerline, what problem are you having downloading WAMP? No, it doesn't matter. It will open it up in Edge on its own, but it's simpler unless you know how to change. Like if you know where Chrome is, then you can go ahead and change to which browser it goes to, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to show you how to access it anyway, so. Yeah, Mahinder, you got 2 of them. Yeah, so the first one in semester 3 is an intro to JavaScript class, and then the one in semester 4 is JavaScript frameworks, which will be the MERN stack. So Mongo, Express, React, and Node. Hello, Gerline. What is your error? Oh, okay, it worked. All right, is anybody still returning? I can't tell if I'm missing people still. I'll just wait to 8:40 and then we'll install WAMP. I know some of you have already gone ahead and installed it, and that's fine. Yeah, I think so too. That's why I always leave a full class for this, because it's there's so many like pieces that have to go together to make this work, and then often people have issues with it as well. So it's usually a good idea to go through this whole process. Oh, okay. Yeah. It should download the second you click on it, like, depending on how you got there. If you follow the link I provided, it should take you here. This download link, I don't know if it's... Yeah, this download link should automatically download it as well. If you click the download link that's there. It should start automatically. Unless for some reason you've turned off automatic downloads. Well, the big green button should download it. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I'm gonna attempt this. So, Aviraj, the issue with using VS, like Visual Studio, is that it's so ridiculously massive. Like, I think the JavaScript download for it, or sorry, not the JavaScript download, but to download PHP for it is like 6 gigs or something stupid. It's so much better just to use a lightweight editor like VS Code or Atom or Brackets or something. It just makes your life so much simpler. Visual Studio is really just such a heavy hitter for this type of stuff. No, you don't need to restart after downloading WAMP. Alright, it's 8:40. I think whoever's coming back is already back. Okay, so we're going to install this. We're going to open up our File Explorer and look for the WAMP server. Okay, it should be under your downloads directory. That's generally where they go. Once you've found the WAMP server, go ahead and double click it. You're going to have to say yes because it's asking for administrative access. And that brings us to this screen here where it says English. Here, I'll minimize this so there's no noise in the background. There. So select the language using during the installation. Your only choices are English or French. You have to accept the agreement. Okay? If you don't accept the agreement, it won't install. Click Next. All of this is fine. Basically what this is talking about is that you must make sure you have the redistributable packages. So the package that we installed should be all that you require. You shouldn't need everything else. If there are issues with your WAMP installation, you may need to go and install the other Visual Studio packages. I don't think so. I don't think we will though. Go ahead and click Next. Leave it where it is. If you've previously installed WAMP before, you will have to go find this directory and delete it. That's the downside to it. You can install it in a different directory, that is fine, but it's going to make it difficult to follow along. So I'll repeat that. If you have installed WAMP before, you need to go find the C drive directory, the WAMP64 folder, which is on your C drive, and remove it. So if I go to this PC, C drive, and look for WAMP64, it's not in here because I don't have that directory. If it uninstalled correctly, then you shouldn't have an issue and you shouldn't have this stray WAMP64 directory anywhere. After you've done that, you can go ahead and click Next. Just leave the check marks that are checked as is. We don't need to install any of the other versions of PHP. We're only going to be using the maximum version of 7.3.21, which is the default one that it uses. We're going to use the default MySQL, and everything else stays the way it is. So don't check anything or uncheck anything. Just click Next. No, you already downloaded the packages that you need. You're fine. We're just installing. You're good. Click Next after you get to this screen here. This is just telling you what's going to be installed, which is totally okay. Click Install, and then off it goes. And this can sometimes take a little bit of time, but we'll just leave it. Mohit, your question, you have VS Code and MySQL. Do you need to install anything else? Do you mean that you have the MySQL server installed, so you don't have PHP or Apache installed? This is kind of why I asked that question earlier, guys. Like, if you have Anju and you have WAMP, that's what you need to use. If you've installed MySQL D, we need to get rid of it, because the thing is a train wreck when it comes to WAMP. It won't work. You will have a lot of issues. Mohit, you need to install WAMP if you don't have it. It's fine. You're going to have MySQL D still. It will cause a conflict, but we're not doing any MySQL stuff today anyways. So just download WAMP and install it. No, Garlene, you've downloaded everything you need. Did you install the VCRE and restart? Garlene. Okay, and then you installed WAMP? Like, have you been following along with our install? Okay, good. Then you're fine. So at this screen here where it says Internet Explorer, you can say yes to choose a different browser. I do say yes usually. Then I navigate to local disk C. I go to Program Files. I go to Google. And if you're losing, you can just follow along up here. It tells you the paths. I go to Chrome, Application, Chrome.exe. So I follow this path here. And then I select the Chrome.exe, not the Chrome proxy, Chrome.exe, and I hit open. This says it wants to use Notepad. I don't really care, so I just click no. You can match it to VS Code, but it's a pain in the butt to get to. It's underneath a bunch of hidden files. Under app data, under your user account. So that's all we need to do now once you hit to this screen. What about N++? What is N++? I'm not sure what you mean by M++. Oh, Notepad++. No, that's fine. Just leave it. Yeah, that's totally fine. Just click no. We're going to open our projects in VS Code or whatever project editor you're using anyways, so it doesn't matter. Once we're done and we hit this last next button, we just click next, and then it says finish. Click finish. All right. So a heads up, because everybody always asks. The first time we open WAMP, it's going to fail. One of the services is not going to start, and that is okay. Don't freak out. What we're going to do is restart it, and once we restart it, it should go green. Some of you... Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Just leave it as Notepad. Just hit no. Gerline. Some of you, it might stay orange, and it might not change for you. And that's okay as well. We'll address that when we get to the MySQL side of this. It likely means that you have a MySQL service running, and then when it tried to boot the MySQL service, it found a conflict. That's okay. We're not going to be using MySQL tonight. We're not going to be using MySQL next week either. So we have some time to catch up and fix it. Yeah, Gerline, you can just leave it as Notepad. That's fine. Just hit no. All right. Has everybody got it installed, or is people still installing? Yep. After that, just next. Okay. Gerline, is it all installed? Okay, awesome. So now we want to open up WAMP. It's not currently running, so we're going to hit our space bar, or sorry, not our space bar, our Windows key, and we're going to type in WAMP, and we should see it up here, WAMP 64. Click on it. Now before you click on it, I'm going to explain something. A bunch of little black windows are going to load up. Do not close them. Don't chase them around with your mouse closing them off, because they need to open, because what they're doing is starting services in the background. So let them all start up. Once they're all done and all started, then the WAMP icon will appear at the bottom of the screen. So just wait for them all to disappear. So I'm going to click WAMP server. It's going to say I need to say yes, right? Because I have to give it administrative access. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4, there's 5. They all disappear. And now I have a little orange icon, and when I hover over it, sorry, now it's green. It's only because I've installed it once before. It says all services running. Yours will likely say 2 out of 3 services are running and be orange. I would like you to post your WAMP status, whether it's orange or green. Nice. Yay, yay, yay. Look at all the greens. Nice. Awesome. Let's be happy. If you have 2 little icons, try hovering over one of them. Does it go away, Alec? Okay, right-click on them each and close them off, and then reopen WAMP. So if you right-click on it, you can click Exit. Exit out of each one, and then reopen them, Alec. Now, Windows kind of sucks in the fact that this icon will likely disappear, and you will find it underneath this arrow. If you want it to be permanently visible, you can right-click on your taskbar, choose Taskbar Settings. That will open up this window. Scroll to where it says select which icons appear on the taskbar. Okay. Click that. That will show you a list of the icons on your taskbar, and just toggle this from off to on beside AE tray menu, and then it will show always. It's kind of handy. Drag and drop would do. Drag and drop would do what, Maginder? Oh, do you mean like you could just pull it out? Maybe. I don't know. I've never tried that. Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that totally works. Nice. Intuitive. Yeah, you can do that too. Like Maginder said, just drag and pull it out into the thing. That also works. Awesome. Cool. Happy find. Yeah, literally. Literally every day I learn something new. All right. I'm going to move my lesson plan over so it's not interfering with things that we're doing. There we go. I'm going to move this chat thing, participation window over. Okay, so we have WAMP installed. Sounds like everybody's good. Oh, geez, Thomas, you missed so much. Can you install... What are you using, Thomas? Are you using a Mac or a PC? I didn't catch. PC? Okay, cool. So have you installed WAMP yet, or you were just restarting after installing the VC, or like the VC++ thing? Okay, so you go ahead and install WAMP, and let me know once WAMP's installed. Just keep hitting next. Don't change any options, just keep hitting next until it's installed and you've clicked finish. And let me know when you're done. Okay. You know what? This is a good point to take a small break. So why don't we take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back at 9:05. Thomas, I'll stay here while you're doing your installation. The rest of you can go grab a drink or something. All right, I'm just going to unpause. I don't think I'm muted anymore. Nope, not muted. All right, Thomas, just double check. Is it installed or is it still installing? It does take sometimes a few seconds. Whoa, no. What are you installing in that? Is that where you're selecting the program to use, Una? Like when it asks you, it's trying to use Internet Explorer. Is this for changing it from Internet Explorer to Chrome? Is that what you're asking? Or are you trying to install WAMP there? No, don't install there. Just install WAMP in WAMP64. C:/WAMP64. The default destination. Actually, I would almost recommend closing that and reopening it and restarting the installation, Una, so that it's all the default settings. Awesome, Thomas. Thank you. Sounds like a great idea, Alec. I mean, who needs to know PHP today? Nobody needs to know it. All right, we do have to do some setup stuff. We need to get file locations set up. Oh, okay, so that's likely an issue with the redistributable C++ library missing. Anytime that's an issue, it's always one of those stupid libraries that are missing. You can try installing one of the other C++ libraries. I think, do I have it in my lesson plan? How to do that? Hold on. See, it should only be the one that you need to have installed, Jonathan. Did you install the Visual C++ redistributable? Yeah, Thomas, that's fine. Just click no. Okay, and did you restart, Jonathan? Huh. You might be missing another one that you need. It probably wouldn't hurt to install the 2015 one, I guess. Try installing that one and see if that fixes the issue. Yeah. I'll wait for you because this is like fundamental for us to be able to use PHP. I need to make sure everybody has it installed. Una, did you get everything installed? How do I get Slack into dark mode? You're almost done? Okay. Oh, stop messing around. Under... Oy, I always have trouble finding it. Oh. It's under... Okay, so up at the top, you'll see the three little lines. If you click that, click File, click Preferences, and then it's under Themes, you choose Dark Mode. That's what it goes. Do I still have to reboot after this? You might have to? I don't know. Try opening it, see if it works. Just hit Finish, Thomas? Okay, cool. Let me know when yours is done. No, you don't have to, Gerline. You can literally use whatever email address you want. I would recommend the college one, but it's totally up to you. Okay, so Thomas, now that yours is done, go ahead and open up WAMP and tell me what color it finishes at. So the status might stay orange, and if it does, then it's orange, but it should go green. And to open it, just hit your Windows key and type in WAMP, and it should be the top option. So if I type in WAMP, see? It should be this option. Yes, don't close those command prompts, though. Just let them open and close on their own, Thomas. It's loading up background services is what it's doing. So it opens a command prompt, loads a background service, closes a command prompt. Kind of. You kind of use it through the browser, not really. It runs and provides the Apache server for us, which is, we're going to connect to it through the browser, yes. So everything we do and that you will visually see will be in the browser. So I guess, yes, technically you're right. All right, we done? Is it installed? Okay, have you opened WAMP? Okay, cool. And is it green? Yes. Thomas, is yours green? Suspense is killing me. Little white box with green like U's? Yes, just like mine down here. Nice. Awesome, everybody's green. Yay, we're all green. Okay, cool. So, where do we put our files? That's really becomes it, right? So in order to access WAMP, we can do that quite easily. If you just open up the browser that you're most happy with, right? Whatever browser that is, whether it's Edge, Chrome. Wow, brain stopped working as if I settled on Edge. I don't use Edge, I swear. Chrome, Safari, Firefox. I mean, is there any others, right? Anyways, open it up and just type in localhost, just localhost by itself, and hit enter. And you should see this WAMP64 documentation site. And that's very good news, by the way, if you see this documentation site, because it means your Apache server is working, it means PHP is working, and it likely means that your MySQL is working as well. Yes, entirely. Yeah, you don't need internet to develop locally. That's the great thing about this. WAMP will work without internet access. So if you're in kind of a sketchy internet zone and it drops in and out, not a big deal. It's not going to affect your work. No space. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, cool. So why don't we add our own custom file to it? So this comes into setting up our file system. Now, for those of you that are using XAMPP, I think it's a little different. So for the PC users, for WAMP, we'll walk through that one first. Go to this PC, so open up File Explorer, go to this PC, open up your C drive, scroll in your list till you see the WAMP64 folder, and double click on it. This is the path that you're attempting to get to. Once you're there, you're going to see a lot of stuff in here. There's the uninstallers, there's the scripts directory, there's bin directories. The bin directory is where all of your PHP installations and MySQL installations are stored. The only directory we care about is the www directory. So double click on that. That will put you here. Anything to do with PHP needs to live in this directory. This is our public directory. So when we look at the internet and we're serving our application, this is what gets served to the internet. So right now, what you are seeing in this page on localhost is this index.php file. That index.php file is what is currently serving this page. So the way it works is that the Apache server will only deliver responses from a specified public directory. So it's already built in. We don't need to worry about it. It's in there already, but it's only specified public directories that we have told it to use. It does this to protect your computer, because your computer is the thing that's being accessed from the browser right now. You don't want people having access to your local disk, right? That would be bad. You only want people to be able to access the public folder. So this is the public folder. It's only your index file, all files without .php. Oh, right. So the way you fix that, so what I think Gerline is talking about is that these extensions are missing. The way you can fix that is at the top of the window here, it says View. Click on View and click the checkbox next to File Name Extensions. See, if I check it, they all disappear, and now I can't see what they are. But if I click View, File Name Extensions, now I can see my file name extensions. That should be on. As a developer, you definitely want that on. So we're going to create our own file system in here as well. Not our own file system, sorry. We're going to create our own files in here for our own personal websites. So to do that, we're going to create a new directory. And the easiest way to create a directory is by hitting Control, Shift, and N. That will automatically create a new folder. You can also right-click and choose to create a new folder. I'm going to call this Comp 2068, and I'm going to do it with lowercase letters with a dash. So this is the name that I gave the folder. It's still not detecting it. Did you try a restart, Jonathan? Try uninstalling WAMP and reinstalling WAMP. Sometimes WAMP won't pick up the MS service. Oh, you did that as well. The only thing I can suggest is literally downloading and installing every C++ redistributable there is. Sometimes it's required. Oh, before you do that, try opening up WAMP in administrative mode. So if you hit your button and type in WAMP, choose to run it as an administrator first. See if that works. Sometimes it's file permission issues. And then if that doesn't work, here's the list of all the redistributables. You can try installing the 2010, reinstall the 2012, and install the 2013 versions. So 2010, 2012, and 2013. Which would suck, but you might need to. It's kind of surprising that you don't already have them, but Is it a brand new machine that you're using? Like a brand new computer? Yeah, it's definitely strange that you don't already have them. Try that first and see if that works. For the rest of you, in the Comp 2068 folder, so actually before I do that, those of you that are running XAMPP requires that you put this in the htdocs folder. So again, it's the C drive, it's in XAMPP folder, so it'll be C:, XAMPP / that's fine. As long as you have WAMP, you don't need XAMPP. XAMPP / htdocs /. That's where you want to be. I don't think there's a www folder in there. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've seen that directory. For those of you that are using XAMPP. If you're on a Mac and you're using XAMPP, oh God. It's in Finder. I think it's under Applications. I want to say it's under Applications. And then it's under XAMPP. And then htdocs. I think. That being said, often some of these guys give you a link to it. Like you can actually access your www directory by just clicking on the WAMP logo and clicking the www directory button, and it will open the file there. Like it will open the folder there. You're in the folder now. Brian, are you using a Mac or a Windows PC? A Mac? And what is the directory structure? Is it Applications, htdocs? Could you share the directory structure so that other Mac users know where to find it? It should be like Applications / see, it's such a pain in the butt to find the path from Mac as well. Like even if you click on info, like right click and then click info, I think it doesn't give you a way to select it. Hold on. Maybe I can just find it. XAMPP htdoc location Mac. Oh, you have to mount it first. Did you have to mount it, Brian, before you were able to access it? Okay, so you have to mount it first. Oh, so that is an option under the XAMPP settings. So if you look under the XAMPP settings, there'll be a mount option somewhere. Maybe I can find a link to it. Mac mount XAMPP. Maybe I can find an image. I don't see any images. That's what I'm asking for. Images. There we go. Looks like that. Yeah. Mount and then explore, and explore will take you right there. Thank you so much. Totally forgot about that. Once you're in that directory, whether you're in WAMP or whether you're in XAMPP, then you want to create the Comp 2068 folder, and then inside there, you're going to create your lesson folder. So we'll do it this way this time. Right-click, choose New, and Folder. And I'm going to put lesson-01 in here. And then once you have the lesson 1 folder in there, we're going to right click and choose to open with code, or you can open it in the IDE that you're using. Doesn't matter which one you're using. All right. Is anybody lost? No? Okay, so we're going to create a new index.php file after opening. You're lost after opening? Like after opening the folder in your IDE? Did you open the folder into your IDE? Like your code editor? You did? Oh, then you're not lost. You're caught up. I haven't done anything yet. Nope, not yet. Just wait. I'll tell you what to do. All right. Gerline is jumping the gun. She wants to create the new file, and you can do that. You can just click the new file, or you can right-click and choose to create a new file. And we're going to call this index.nothtml. What do you think we might end the extension with? Does anybody have a clue? Yes, PHP. We're going to call it .php. And the reason is that PHP files, in order for the PHP binary to process the file, it has to end in a PHP extension. It doesn't have to, actually. We can go into our Apache server and change it entirely. Yeah, we could literally change not HTML if we wanted to. But it requires a bit of configuration to do that. We're just going to leave it as the default PHP. There's no reason for us to do that. So we have this index.php file, and I mean, anytime you create a brand new file for a programming language, anytime you're working in a brand new programming language that you've never done before, you always have to honor it with the traditional hello world, right? So we're going to create a hello world. So the way we define PHP inside our file is by using a less than symbol, a question mark, and the letters of PHP. Where are we saving this? Hold on. There. So we do a less than symbol, a question mark, and then the letters PHP, and then we close it with a question mark and a greater than symbol. This creates what's known as a PHP block. And the purpose of the block is to tell the compiler when it goes through, the interpreter, when it goes through and interprets our code, where to find PHP code and process it as PHP. So any PHP related type stuff that we want to write needs to live between these two delimiters, essentially. So now all I want to do is output to the screen hello world. And right now I can save this file and I can view it inside my browser. All I have to do is at the end of localhost append comp-2068, so that folder where we put it, lesson-01 index.php, and I should see a blank page. As long as you guys have been following along, it will be the same address as I just posted into the chat for you. You won't see anything on the screen, and if you were to view the page source, you won't see anything in the page source either. Right now, it will just be empty. I want to output something to the screen. I'd like to output hello world. So the way we can do that is by just typing echo. Echo is our way of being able to output something to the screen. So we're going to echo, and then I want to echo hello world, which is a string, right? I don't want to just type in hello world because it will throw an error because it will try to think those things are commands. Instead, I'm going to put them in a string, hello with a comma, world. And we finish all statements in PHP with a semicolon. So this is a statement, and we finish the statement with a semicolon. Echo is a command. You can call it like a function, and you can actually wrap this in parentheses. That is valid code. However, The traditional way of doing it is just echo with the space and then hello world. That's a traditional way of doing it. Now if I refresh my screen, it says hello world. Yes, I'll tell you why it worked. The reason it worked is because you have no other lines of code in there. You only have one line. But the second you add a new line underneath it, it's going to blow up. One line will work, multiple lines will blow up. Now what's cool about PHP is it's a template language, which means it can actually work in conjunction with HTML. So we can actually still, as long as we write it outside of the PHP block, we can write some HTML as well. I am plain HTML. And if I hit refresh, you can see it's rendered the plain HTML. And because it's a templating language, we can also mix it together in kind of an inline way. So we can say another paragraph like so, put some PHP in here like so, and then echo something like, I'm fancy. I'm just going to collapse my sidebar by hitting Control B, but I'm still working in the same file. I haven't left the file. In fact, because PHP is used so often with HTML, it even provides some really handy shortcuts. And one of the biggest shortcuts that we have available to us is the shorthand echo statement. So we can replace HTML file with a PHP extension file. You can if you are in an Apache server with PHP support, yes. If you don't have PHP support and you just put PHP at the end of the file, it will just render it as text. So you have to make sure you have a PHP binary to do that. So let me show you the super, super, super fancy way. But before we do that, we should comment this, right? Super, super fancy shorthand echo. That's our comment. Now our comment's going to show up because our comment right now is missing a fundamental part. Why do you think our comment is showing up? What am I missing that I should probably surround my comment in? Yes, exactly. So I'm using a PHP comment, so it needs to be located in a PHP block. So that's the only absolute super important thing we have to remember when we're working with PHP, that any PHP code must be in a PHP block. So there's my super fancy shorthand echo comment, but it's not my super fancy shorthand echo statement. My super fancy shorthand echo statement looks like this: a question mark, an equal sign, or sorry, a equal sign, and then super fancy shorthand echo, like so. Notice I don't even have a semicolon. We're just right rebelling it. Now here's the interesting thing about PHP as well. We can't see this comment, and you might be thinking, oh, well maybe it just became an HTML comment. However, if I right click and view the page source, where's the comment? PHP will never ever render in the browser without an echo statement. Only those things that have been echoed will render out. Actual PHP code will never show up in the browser for the obvious reason that you wouldn't want your server-side code showing up in the browser. So that's cool. Why don't we do something a little bit more interesting? We'll create another PHP block here, and we can create as many as we want. We can have hundreds of PHP blocks. Let's create a variable. So defining a variable in PHP. So, I mean, this is a fundamental practice, right? We all need to know how to define a variable, right? Because we're going to want to store data. So, I mean, let's store our name. So, unlike in Java, where you define a type and you state that this is the data type, and then this is the variable symbol name, and then this is its value, PHP is super loose. It's very, very casual language. It actually implicitly types. And what that means is that when you give it a value, it automatically figures out what data type it is and accepts it. However, it goes even further that if you assign it a new value later on that is a different data type, it will adjust its data type automatically. So, for example, let's do full name. This is the common convention for defining a variable. All variables in PHP must begin with a $sign. That's not optional. They follow the same principles of variable naming like in any language. Cannot begin with a number, can begin with an underscore, cannot contain dashes, cannot contain symbols, cannot contain, what's the word I'm looking for? Spaces, right? So it does have to follow those principles. And then I'm just going to put my name in a string. So there's my full name. Now when I refresh my browser, you'll notice that nothing has showed up. And if I look at the page source, you don't see any of this code. You only see the HTML code that's been defined. And that's because, again, if it's in a PHP block, it is invisible unless we echo it out. So now I have my full name. I can add my age as well. And I've defined an integer and it just accepts it. I don't need to tell it that it's an integer. It just automatically knows that it's an integer. I can also create an array of items, and unlike Java where I have to predefine that it's a list, I can just say hobbies equals square brackets, Diablo 3, programming, even though it's my day job, it's also a hobby I enjoy, and I don't know, movies, I guess. So there we go. I've got 3 items in my array. Now, if I want to, I can echo out these variables as well. Yep, exactly. Just $sign and whatever the symbol name is. So whether it's full name, age, hobbies, whatever you want to call it. There are some keywords to be aware of, but the cool thing about PHP is the keywords usually begin with an underscore. So it's $sign underscore and then something, right? So you don't have to worry about accidentally stepping on a keyword. However, $sign this. $sign this is a keyword. So now if I wanted to output, say, a simple sentence, right? Why don't we say the name is whatever age years old, right? I can do that using concatenation. However, concatenation in PHP is slightly different than it is in other languages. So concatenation example. So we can say echo, and we can say full name dot. Dot is our concatenating operator. If you want to comment outside the PHP block, you just use a regular HTML comment. Like that. So I have echo dot, and then I want to put a space in there. I need a space. Is another space dot $sign age dot years old. I'll copy and paste that just in case you had any issue writing that. Now when I refresh, we can see super fancy shorthand, echo, Sean McKinnon is 42 years old. Now you might be saying, well, why is all this on the same line when it's not on the same line in the code editor? And the reason is Because PHP is not going to interpret that you want it on another line unless you tell it to. You have to explicitly tell it that you want it to fall on another line. So what we can do is we can actually add a little bit of HTML in here as well. We just simply add another set of quote characters, but this time we add a break tag in. And when I hit refresh, you can see that it gets shoved to the next line. So we can actually add HTML quoted within a PHP string. Let's write this one more time, but this time we're going to use a string interpolation example. What string interpolation does is, instead of you having to concatenate, it will actually evaluate the variable and then output whatever the variable's value is. So we can do that again, same idea, like so, but this time instead of using any concatenation, all we have to do is make sure we're using double quotes. You can't do this with single quotes, but you can do it with double quotes. We're going to add in a set of curly braces and put our variable name in. And the curly braces are optional, but I like them because it definitely helps distinguish where the variables are. So now when I save and I hit refresh, you can see I get the same statement, but I didn't need to use any concatenation. You guys still with me, or have I lost anybody? So one other point to note is that PHP is a super, super loose interpretive language that can definitely cause some issues for people. One is how it treats numbers when they're defined as strings or as an actual integer. For example, if I echo the statement 5 plus 5, 5 plus 5 as integers, this will equal 10. If I echo 5 plus 5, this will also equal 10. And if I echo 5 plus 5, this will also equal 10. Or 10, 10, 10, 10. The reason is that when PHP sees the plus sign operator, it automatically assumes that whatever you're doing, it must be done with numbers. So what it does is it casts this to an integer and then attempts to add it to this, which it now has also cast to an integer. So just keep in mind that when you use the plus sign, unlike in Java or in JavaScript, it does not act like a concatenating number or a concatenating operator. It acts as an actual accumulator. So that can be a gotcha for a few people. So it also supports every type of variable type you can think of, right? So we already seen string, but we can use single quoted string as well. This is known as a string literal. Interpolated string, which is with double quoted. So that supports string interpolation. Yes, plus sign is not overloaded. That is correct. And then we also have integers, floats, or doubles, or whatever you want to call them. We have booleans. Whoops. And I think that's all of them. Yep, that's all of the basic data types, the native data types. So there's also the ability to do multi-line commenting by just opening with the slash asterisk and closing with a an asterisk slash, just like you guys would do in Java. This is a multi-line comment. And again, just like the other ones, multi-line comments don't show up. All right, so we don't need to define a type. That's correct. You don't need to define a type. Difference between single and double quoted strings. Single quotes are string literal. So if I was to try to output the full name in here, like so, it will output that as a literal. And if I try to do it in this one, it will interpolate this and output its value. Did I save? What the hell happened? Oh, because I'm not... Sorry. Totally forgot the echo statement. Let's put the echo statement in. Remember what I said before. Nothing outputs unless with an echo statement. There we go. Now we'll output. So there we are. Here's the single quoted string, right? And as you can see, full name is output as a literal, whereas the double quoted string interpolated the variable and output the value. Is it common to have multiple PHP blocks like we have here? Oh, God, yes. Yeah, definitely. In fact, because of shorthand, like you see, and there's actually more shorthand than just the one we showed. So because of the shorthand type like this, you can have 20, 30 PHP blocks because shorthand kind of takes over. The idea that I want to start you guys off with and teach you is that you don't want to do this. This is bad. Quoting HTML and then outputting quoted HTML so that the parser not only has to decode it as HTML and then deliver it to the browser to be rendered is just bad form. It's not something you should do. What you should do is actually create variables, and then when you're ready to output the value of those variables, use a proper HTML line. So, for example, full name and age, I want to say this same sentence here, but I want to do it properly with HTML. So here's what it would look like properly with HTML. Outputting my variables properly with HTML. So I'm going to create a paragraph, like so, nothing different there. And then I'm going to say the name of the person first, so we'll do equals $ full name. So I'm using that shorthand echo statement is equals $ age years old. Sean McKinnon is 42 years old. The same type, but if you look at it, it is considerably cleaner. So much cleaner looking. It's very easy to tell what is PHP and is a variable that you're working with and what is a part of the content itself. So this is what our goal will be by the end of the course, that when you're writing out HTML and PHP together, that you're using these nice shorthand forms so they look really nice and clean. All right, any other questions? This is literally this is it. This is all that we have for tonight. No, that's it? Awesome. Oh, this theme? The one with the glowing text? So in the extensions, if you hit... I have to zoom out a little bit. Right here, this thing right here, it says extensions. If you click on that and type in synthwave, it's the synthwave 84. Now here's the thing though. You have to install it, and then you have to open VS Code in administrator mode and then enable it. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Maybe if you guys arrive a little early next week, I can walk you through how to do it if you really want this synthwave. It's my favorite. I thought I was going to hate it, but I've been using it solidly for 5 years. Not 5 years, 2 years. And I love it. It's like my favorite thing. I like how it glows. Doesn't annoy me at all. Okay, hold on. Sir, is there any code methods like tabbing? Code methods like tabbing. Do you mean that when you... Oh, coding conventions. Yes, but we'll discuss that more next week. So I do kind of expect your code to be in a decent readable format, but I'll show you something interesting. If I hit Control A and Shift Tab all this to the left, right? This is how I usually get code for most students, especially in like the first 2 semesters. I get it like this. It's all tabbed up against the side, or it's all over the place. If I hit Control A, right click, and where's the formatter? That sucks. That sucks. You need a formatter. But you can always use an online formatter. PHP online formatter. There we go. Beautify the tools. Control A, Control C, Control V, right? So paste it in here. And then beautify my PHP. And it should do squat. It did absolutely squat. Let's see if I can find one that actually works. Here's one. What? There we go. Format. That didn't really work either. I think it might have to do with that a lot of people, when they do PHP, they don't tend to tab in very much, but that might be the case. But there are a lot of like PHP formatters, and you can also download formatters that will format this for you. I do tend to like it when it's put in like this. It makes it easier for me to read. All right, I'm getting down to everybody in 1 second. Line 44, yes. There you go. Is the first quiz due before next class? Yes, before the next class, it's due. That is correct. You'll find the quiz in Blackboard. It is mentioned in the syllabus as well. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. There is a quiz tonight, and it is due by next week. You have 2 attempts, incidentally. One is to cover if Blackboard messes up, but you can use both attempts if you want to. Can we have as many PHP blocks we want or need as long as it's not too much? You can have as many PHP blocks even if it is too much. Use as many as you need. That's what I will say to that. We're going to learn to modularize our code, though, and actually be able to pull code in from other files so that it is cleaner and more modular. Not to use that word too much, but yeah. What class are you running for Diablo Season 22? Not a witch doctor, sorry, a demon hunter right now. I usually play demon hunter. I don't know what it is. I just tend to be good with the demon hunter. That's what I'm running right now, but I'm not taking it as serious as I have for past classes. I'm definitely not putting in the effort. I am a synthwave fan. Yes. I really like 66 Days of Static, or 65 Days of Static, which is a band that did the theme music for No Man's Sky, and I just got into them and started listening to them all the time. They're really good. Can you scroll down the code yet? Quiz 1, it will contain MCQ related. Yes, it will. Yeah, it's mostly MCQ type stuff. No. Whatchamacallit? What is it called? I forget the build name. I always forget. It's the one where you just basically hammer everybody with rapid fire, and then you do vengeance, cloud of vengeance, over and over again, and it just annihilates everybody. But it's a shit build, and I need to do definitely better than that. I can't get past Rift. Oh, I can't remember the Rift number now that I can't get past. I'm up there, but I need to do better. I'm not a great player, to be honest with you, despite how much I love it. Upon opening VSC, I get a pop-up that says cannot validate. Yes. Okay, so that pop-up is caused because it's looking for where the PHP executable set is. Inside VS Code, if you hit Control-Shift-P, so Control-Shift-P for Paul, and choose and type in settings, like so, you're looking for this option, open settings JSON. So Control-Shift-P, I'll type that out, Control plus Shift plus P. Nope, that was not a P. Let me try that again. Control plus Shift plus P. That. There we go. And then search for settings. So when you do it, it's Control Shift P, settings, and you want these two lines. And that should be the same for everybody using Windows. Doesn't matter who you are. Just make sure you don't leave out these commas. Okay, unless it's the last line. If it winds up being the last line, then get rid of the comma. Because it's JSON structure, so it has to look like JSON structure. I'll expand it so you can see what I mean. And that will get rid of that warning for you. Now, if you want, I will publish this file to Blackboard. Is that helpful? You know what? I'm just going to do it anyways. Yeah, just save it and close it. That's it. It will automatically take effect. I just need to browse to the file location. Do comp1006. Oh no, right, it's in my C drive. I always forget about these live lessons. Go. Lesson code. Go. Alright, so the file is online. It's called lesson code. Yep, we're all done. That's it. Yes, I can. Any particular section, Gerline? See ya. Line 25. Yep. I hear ya, Manjinder. I'm getting hungry too. What's your error, Gerline?